I think the last time we recorded was like April 2023 or something.
Yeah, it's been serious.
It's been off.
Hang on, I can see when is June 23rd.
Oh, wow.
It's been over a year.
Welcome back to Book Club Unhinged, where we talk about books and you shut up and listen, right? Been a hot second. We keep saying we're not going to do this anymore, but we are fickle human beings.
We lied.
Yes, we lied very much, and we humbly apologize and ask for any forgiveness.
I don't apologize.
Wow.
Point is, we have had a lot going on in the past year. Our lives have been, a little bit on the upheaval, and now that they're finally, not, we thought, hey,
speak for yourself.
Okay, well, we thought, hey, let's get back to the podcast, and
to reading.
It's been a while since we touched Tokyo Ever After, so we might come back to that. But for now, we're gonna restart a new book, and we're gonna go from there. And we're gonna get started with Mother Jensen's newest book.
Fate Inked in Blood.
Yes.
And who wants to read us our synopsis?
A shield maiden blessed by the gods battles to unite a nation under a power-hungry king, while fighting her growing desire for his fiery son, literally, in this Norse-inspired fantasy romance. Bound in an unwanted marriage, Freya spends her days gutting fish, but dreams of becoming a warrior, and putting an axe in her boorish husband's back. That's very girl boss of you. Freya's dreams abruptly become reality when her husband betrays her to the Regent's Jarl, landing her in a fight to the death against his son, Bjorn. To survive, Freya is forced to reveal her deepest secret. She possesses a drop of a goddess's blood, which makes her a shield maiden with magic capable of repelling any attack. And it's been foretold that such magic will unite the fractured nation of Scotland beneath the one who controls the shield maiden's fate. Believing he's destined to rule Scotland as king, the fanatical Jarl binds Freya with a blood oath and orders Bjorn to protect her from their enemies. Desperate to prove her strength, Freya must train to fight and learn to control her magic, all while facing perilous tests set by the gods. The greatest test of all, however, may be resisting her forbidden attraction to Bjorn. If Freya succumbs to her lust for the charming and fierce warrior, she risks not only her own destiny, but the fate of all the people she has sworn to protect.
So, I'm going to be honest, I did not read the synopsis before you guys chose this book, because I was caught so off guard by everything that happened in these first 5 chapters. I didn't read I have a tendency not to do that, to not read synopsises. I will just, if somebody recommends me a book, or if I see the cover is pretty, I will buy it. Or if it's like an author that I really like, which Danielle L. Jensen, I love Bridge Kingdom and everything like that. So
she's Mother.
I was like, I will probably like this. And then you guys suggested a book club, and I was like, oh yeah, sure, we can do that. I was completely if I had read the synopsis, then I probably would have been like, oh yeah, this book probably has a lot of smut and sexual references.
Which is funny because,
but I was like that. Oh.
Here's one of the things, before we even get into it, I like when everything in the synopsis is laid out, in the very beginning.
Yeah.
Everything that is listed there, all the main ideas, is literally
the first 5 chapters.
Yes, and thank you, Danielle L. Jensen, for doing that, because I hate when it's, page 100, and you're like, nah, we've checked 2 boxes.
Mm-hmm.
We've checked 2 boxes.
And there is something that I kind of like about going into a book, completely blind.
Yeah.
I feel like I would have been a lot less surprised of stuff that happened in the first 5 chapters had I read the synopsis, because it is right there.
Yeah.
But it kind of gave that element of I didn't know that this would happen.
Yeah.
And
I didn't read it at all. I didn't read the synopsis at all, and I think it made the experience for the first 5 chapters a whole lot better for me.
Yeah, I think so too.
Anyways, so chapter 1,
first impressions. Let's talk about our first impressions.
Yes.
Wow, this girl is horny.
Of chapter 1, or
I think of the first 5 chapters.
First 5 chapters. Yeah, this girl is
she's
starved.
in heat. I think she's been sexually starved because her husband's an asshole.
Well, yeah.
So
I do like the fact that this book has marriage in it, even though the marriage to the guy sucked, but mentions it, or it's the main character was at one point married, because I feel like you get a lot of fantasies where it's so and so is fated to marry this person, and then it doesn't go through, it doesn't work, and like all of this stuff, and like you really only get any other mention of marriage unless it's like a happy ending or something like that. Yeah. So it's nice. I mean, I guess like Bridge Kingdom, they were technically man and wife, but it didn't like feel that way, you know?
Well, yeah,
they didn't know each other.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think her and what's his face have been married for a year at this point.
Yeah, I don't know how to.
No, I thought it was more than one.
Well, no, because he said he's been siring her for a year with no child. So
yeah,
like I would assume they got married a year ago.
I think it was a year. I think.
Also, though, I had to roll my eyes a little bit in the first chapter where she's talking about like, oh, she's gutting the fish and all this stuff, but secretly she's been training in the woods for. And I was like, call that. That's a typical YA kind of thing.
This is not YA.
I know this is not YA, but that reads very YA.
Yeah. Well, also like, I don't think it did mention that she's been training in the woods, and I was like, okay, yeah, here we go. But she also has been training, like she's trained as. Like, since she was a child.
Well, yes, I know that.
She wasn't, like, it was a regular thing, so she's probably brushing up on her skills in the woods.
But
it's not like I'm a 19-year-old woman with no fighting experience who just picks up a shield and knows what to do with it, which I really appreciate.
And it's mentioned later that her dad taught her and her brother taught her how to keep her own, at least.
Yes. But, like, for me, that, like, the beginning of the book, again, felt like a very much, like, this is definitely, like, an adult fantasy. Yeah. So it, like, felt, like I was reading an adult fantasy. Like, it was very much that way. But then when I got to that line, I was like, okay, that, like, threw me way back to, like, 2014 YA. Yeah. But then, you know, it picks back up again. It's just that line, it's so over, like, used and everything like that. But, like, then it does explain that she does have, like, other training and stuff like that. But, like, just with that, it was like, okay.
Yeah. So, her husband, Vragi, or whatever his name is
he's an ass.
He's a jerk.
Yes.
You know, like, he
basically
gets mad at Freya for not gutting the fish, right? And is like...
Right.
Well, and it's also the assholes that are also blessed with god magic, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because he has the fish magic.
Fish magic.
The fish magic?
The fish magic. He go wiggle his fingers, go woo, and a whole bunch of fish will appear.
Yeah, so it says right here, page 4, my dear husband was a child of the gods, having been granted a drop of Njord's blood at his conception, which gave him powerful magic over the creatures of the sea.
Yeah.
I think he uses it for evil and like catches all the fish and then charges double, all the things.
I think that's like my favorite part about the first chapter is that he's a hero who let the fame and power get to him. Yeah. Which I think is not used as much in fantasy a whole lot, at least in the fantasy.
It's also it's always like a tortured villain.
Yeah, it's always a tortured villain, but I think he's not even just an arrogant, greedy asshole. He's also like somebody who became heroic and got so used to the praise that he just craves it now, and it's all he ever wants.
Yeah.
Which I think is a great introduction for a bad guy.
And then also, page 5, it does say, a year woman, a whole year of marriage and servicing, and yet no son. So they have been married a year.
I will say.
But she's been preventing
she's been, like the queen
she's like, I would rather not.
She was not gonna sire his child, and so she was, I mean, good on her. Lemon juice in the coochie sounds really awful.
Yeah, that does
that's a UTI waiting to happen,
I love, now this is a little later on, but I love when they're like, I think this was in chapter 5 or whatever, where they're standing there and they're like, how have you not noticed your woman tasting of lemons?
Yes!
And I was like,
ooh!
I think that's
and then they were, and then
I think that's chapter 2. I think that's way earlier.
No, I think it's
like chapter 4 or 5.
But maybe when they're fighting.
That's true, right.
Wait, but that did happen. That did happen in chapter 2. No, Allie's right.
Really?
Chapter 2 is when they start to fight. Something. Because chapter 1 is when we get introduced to Mr. Juicy Lips over here, where she goes cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and was like.
Which, by the way, obviously basically what goes on is Vragi gets mad at her for getting the fish, gets mad at her for not having a son, just gets mad and storms off, and essentially is like,
throws a piss party.
By the way, uses his magic and is like, here's all these extra fish, you have to gut them. And Freya's like, you know what? No, I'm not going to do that. So she starts throwing the fish back in the water.
They were still alive.
They were still alive, so she was trying to throw them back in the water to have less work. And I think this is probably my favorite way that the love interest has ever been introduced, ever.
Oh, yeah.
Freya throws the fish back in the water and hits Bjorn with it.
Yeah.
And And that is how they meet. And that is forget the bookstore meet cute, forget all of it.
Just straight up whacks him.
Team getting hit with a fish.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like that, and I like their banter back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
But this is just me, and I think like you know what I'm about to say.
Mm-hmm.
I hate how fast it got so sexual.
Yeah.
Like,
it did. I
feel like it was so
as an avid
immediate.
smut reader,
Smuff.
I can't speak English today. As an avid smut reader, I did very much. I was like, okay, we're literally like 5 pages in. Can you chill, lady?
I get it. You've been starved for sex, but at the same time, I'm like,
and attention.
You just.
And then he jumps into being like, I'm gonna kill your husband so I can marry you.
Yeah,
like,
okay. Well, it wasn't even so he could marry her. It's so
and
he
then
could bet
her.
her.
I love how Freya was like, bet, do it.
She almost did.
She was like,
she almost did, but then she was like, no, you can't do that because her husband is like magic boy who can control.
Like, I wish there was more like banter.
Do
there was more like banter back and forth because their banter was really nice.
Mm-hmm.
More banter and then maybe internal thoughts on her end, but like that just felt so fast.
It did.
Yeah,
it caught me off guard. I was like, oh damn, okay.
Yeah, even
like,
I was reading. I was like, oh, we're starting this.
Uh-huh.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
And it's not that it was like bad.
Mm-hmm.
It was nicely written, but it was very much like, we're starting now.
When we get into like where Vigari or whatever the heck his name is, and Gear, her brother, comes in and is like, hey, your husband's talking to the Jarl, who's like apparently this big, who's like, I guess they're considered like the generals or like the leaders of
military leader.
And she's like all concerned, like, oh, what the heck could they possibly be talking about? I think the intensity with the sexual situations that we find ourselves in the first couple chapters, to me, seemed to be there intentionally, like to show how women how women are treated by men in this culture, and like they're just viewed as property by probably some of the most higher up men.
The language is very like harshly written, and I think that's intentional.
Yeah,
but like I mean, that's just coming from me. Like I don't read a ton of smut, and not having read the synopsis, I had no idea that this was coming. So like after the very first chapter, I was like, what the hell is happening? What the hell? Like, what the hell, girl? What the hell?
Mom, come pick me up. I'm scared. So chapter 2. She's flustered. She's doing her thing, and she's talking basically about how she hates the fact that she's just surviving this marriage that she despises.
Yeah.
Which I definitely feel like we've all been there at one point where we're just kind of going through the motions of life, like wanting more, but then.
I thought you said going through the motions of marriage, like you're gonna be like, yeah, we've all had that moment in marriage of like.
No, just like life in general, where you're just going through the motions and being like, I know that I can do more, but I'm kind of stuck in this waiting.
That is essentially what college is.
Yeah. Oh, I enjoyed college actually.
I did not.
I
very
enjoyed
different
college.
views of college.
I went to medical field college. They suck the soul right out of you. You leave smart, but they suck it right out of you.
It's not like what I did wasn't difficult. Like it was really difficult.
Oh no, I'm not saying
but
that at all.
I love like learning and like for what like I worked my ass off to get that. But I genuinely enjoyed college.
Yeah, But you also went to like a more.
I went to a really small traditional school.
Yeah,
I only had 11 people that graduated with my major.
Yeah, I went to a commuter school, which was fine. Like it wasn't bad. Like it wasn't necessarily a bad school. It was not like your typical college experience. And again, I kind of went in. I was like, I'm not really 100% here to make friends. I love the people from my X-ray class. Like shout out to anybody who might be listening. But like they're great. But like, I was there to get my degree and go home.
I dropped out of college.
Yes.
We have all 3 different perspectives.
Yeah.
But anyway, that has nothing to do with this, other than the fact that I said we feel like everybody at this point in their life has
gone through it.
Some sort of stuck, and it is the most frustrating emotion.
It's so annoying.
It was very validating to read about that.
I think I've enjoyed the majority of these first 5 chapters because of how relatable it is in such a different way than most fantasy books start out. The second chapter really delves into Freya talking with her brother about her marriage and how her husband whatever the heck, Froggy, whatever. I'm gonna call him Froggy at this point.
Froggy. He doesn't deserve a real name.
He doesn't really deserve a real name.
Well, he also isn't relevant.
Oh, well,
you know.
something also to mention. The guy that she met in the river is the Bjorn guy.
Mm-hmm.
He is, along with, like, the general and stuff he's like the... Well,
general,
we find out in this chapter he's the general
of, like,
son.
a different province or whatever you call it.
I think
No, he looked like some guy from the other province,
area.
but he was still fighting with her.
Yeah,
he was fighting alongside her brother, who was also a part of that.
Yeah, the Jarl, like, they're not... Are they of the same area, or is it, like... Okay, I wasn't sure if it was, like, they were, like, Snorri was from a different area.
Yeah,
but.
So she originally thought that he was from this, like, neighboring raiding tribe because of just the way that he looked, but then he mentioned that he was fighting with
the Jarl.
With the Jarl, yeah. Well, and then her brother is also fighting with this guy to earn.
And the only way that
his
he got that job
value.
is because of Freya's husband, and he says that to her, even though she says it's been apparently she beat him bloody. I love their conversation as brother and sister because you can tell it still gives you that perspective of how women are looked at by men, but at the same time
They're still brother and
sister, and that he still loves her more than what society is telling him to treat her like. He still treats her better.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that as well, because he even gets into the moment where he's like, well, I'm the man, I'm supposed to provide for you, blah blah blah, and then she's like, no,
it's my husband that got you this job, you dum dum.
Yeah. Well, but then he also, like, brings up something that, again, it kind of pushes one of her buttons, but he's like, oh, when you have a baby, like, you'll settle down, you'll get into something like that, and that really triggers her because she's like, that's not what I want.
Yeah, it's not what I'm here for.
But he again, because he's a guy in this society, that's what he thinks. That's what he's been told.
That's what their women are expected to do.
Even though he knows her abilities.
Yeah.
He's completely...
Well, that's another thing I found interesting. It seems some women are in war and in armies, and then, like, there's a couple select women that are have more prominent roles.
Yeah.
But then others are just not. So I'm wondering I'm interested to see what the dynamic is of where it's like, hey, what decides, like, which women get to go and fight in the military and do whatever, and which ones are just like, you have husband and make child.
I think it's something to do with or something to do with the god magic.
Yeah, that's true.
Too. I also really want to know how prevalent this god magic is, because it's almost presented as it being rare, but right off the bat we meet so many.
We have we
have four.
Four?
Yep. No, because the one woman is like a god blessing.
Yeah.
So four. And right off the bat, 4. And I'm like, okay, so is it rare?
There are a lot of gods, though, so I mean,
but I think the Jarl
like
also collects people that have that magic to be used.
That's kind of just what I want to find out a little bit. That's one of the things that I really want to figure out more, because it gave us the lore of, like, how it happened, which, by the way, that would be super fucking weird.
Like, there's a god there during sex.
There's a god that
because they have to be present during the conception of the child to give their. They have to be, and it said they have to be a participant. So can you imagine being
a participant?
Yes,
you have to participate, or there's another way during the conception of the child. I think that, like, after the deed has been done.
No, it has to be at conception, I think.
Yeah, I don't know how much detail they go into that.
Where did I think I highlighted it, because I was like, what the hell?
Yeah, can you imagine just, like,
being in a very monogamous relationship, and all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, by the way,
we're being watched
by a god. Better perform well, honey.
Or do they not know? Like, maybe is it just like they're there in spirit type thing?
I don't know if they know or not.
Where is that?
Because, like, if you're not actively like having sex with a god, they how would you? Can you imagine? It's like oh yeah, we're having married people time, and it's like, hello, I am a god, and I'm going to watch
page
you.
50. Children of the gods were created when one of the gods gifted a child a drop of their divine blood upon conception. In some instances, the gods were active participants in the sex, but that was not necessary. They need only be present for the act of creation, which meant that while some parents might suspect the third party of their tryst had given them a child with divine blood, Some were entirely oblivious until the day the child's magic appeared.
So they have to be there at conception.
Yes.
So no matter what, you're
thing.
having a god there while you're getting down and dirty.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that just...
It's just whether you know they're there or not.
Yeah, whether they show up and go all, not Hercules, Zeus on you. Or if they stay very quiet and far away.
Man, why is ancient mythology so sexual?
I don't know.
Well, I think this is something that Miss Jensen made up.
Yeah.
But used, the Norse
It is
stuff.
based off of Norse mythology, so
well,
it's probably filled with a lot of sex.
I don't think that this is technically part of the Norse line. But anyway, can you I just imagine, one of the more, awkward gods just standing in the corner while they're like, okay, I want to have a child with my, but is now a good time? That would be me as a god. I'd be like, hey, here you go.
Yeah.
Is this a good time? Should I come back? I don't like this.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, so even her brother sees her as that kind of role, even though she has the magic.
Yeah.
And then we basically, a little bit later in the chapter, Rocky sells the bitch out and is like, child of ill. Yeah, basically implying, trying to get her arrested or killed or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he basically...
we're skipping a couple of steps. We are skipping
far
far ahead.
Tyr and Frey are together, and then Vragi and Snorri comes back. Snorri the freaking
Snorri's the
dwarf.
general guy.
Yeah, the general guy.
He is the guy that's macho man.
And I have it highlighted here how she describes him. She gives the attributes: tall and thick, dark brown hair, whatever. And at the very end, she said most would have called him attractive, but the way that he stared at me made my skin crawl, like I was something to be possessed. And I think that just feeds into more of how, again, women are viewed, which I was like, okay.
It also definitely hits home that you can be the most attractive man in the world. If you are creepy, no one is gonna want you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
True.
PSA to all my male listeners out there.
Nice guys do finish last.
Yeah.
Nice in quotes. Okay.
The weird nice guys.
Let it be said.
And then it describes the women that are with his fighting party, the people in his troop. And the woman the way that she's dressed is she has her dress cut low enough to reveal a long stretch of cleavage beneath the ties of all her cloak. Yeah, my eyes skipped past all of that to land on the one who rode in the rear of the party, which was
Bjorn.
Bjorn.
I know his name is Bjorn, but whenever I read it as Bjorn, and I don't think I can ever not read it as Bjorn.
Bjorn.
It kind of sounds like when you flick something against metal. It's like, Bjorn.
Yeah. Also, if you guys do need a pronunciation guide for this,
yes, they're all on her website.
They're all on her website, and some of them are funny to listen to. So
because I think they're taken from the audiobook, so it's I think when we heard Bjorn's, it was in a whisper, Bjorn, or something like that.
What is this?
We're like, whoa, did I just talk to a Will-o'-the-Wisper? What the hell?
Yeah.
But so we probably will pronounce things a little bit incorrectly because we are still getting used to it. We're not native speakers of this language, so
we gotta stop picking books with different languages in them.
But it's fun.
We're incriminating ourselves.
Right. So this is the moment where Vagari tells Freya that he basically sold her out.
Yeah.
And was selling her off to
Snorri
over here. Because he was tired. He was tired of her not giving him his child and all of this stuff. And she kind of knows that something's up here. She has her spidey senses going off.
Yeah.
That this is
but then
something
Snorri's
bigger.
Hey, you want to be a warrior? You're gonna fight. My men.
You're gonna fight to the death.
Yeah. And then he's like, you're gonna fight to the death, and he picks his son to fight her, and his son is Bjorn is hell no, brother. But
Bjorn is the one that she met in the river, for clarification.
Yes.
The one that she was I am loving this view here.
The one that she hit with fish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bjorn comes up to the fight and his axe lights on fire.
Because he's also God bless.
Yeah. He's also got a drop of that god blood.
From Tyr.
From sex.
From Tyr.
From sex.
from Thier, the flame
Is
god.
this before or after he, Gear gets an axe to the femur?
No,
It was
this
before.
is before.
Okay.
This is
Yeah.
before. So yeah. Anyway, so she agrees to fight him. If she kills him, then she gets to go, be a soldier with them, and she gets to divorce her husband.
Yeah.
Which I'm guessing is a big deal because I don't think women are allowed to divorce their husbands
Yeah,
in this
probably not.
world. So, yes. And then he was like, he turns to the husband, "Do you agree to end this marriage?" And gladly,
he's all smart about it.
Here's one of my favorite lines. This is Bjorn talking. "Sorry for this, Freya," he said. "May Odin himself greet you with a full cup." "I'm sure he will," I smiled sweetly, "because you'll warn him to be ready for me when you arrive, which will be sooner than you think."
Yeah.
Yes. Again, the banter between the two is very nice.
Yeah.
And
they
then
do
he
have
like
good combos.
Bjorn starts to turn back to Vigari and is like, "You are a fool," and then she goes and attacks him and he's like, "Oh shit."
He's like, "Oh,
Where's
okay."
the part with the lemons?
I'm looking for it.
I think it's in the middle of their fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the middle of their fight.
Let me
They're
see.
fighting.
Oh, here we go.
Oh,
Here we go.
yes!
Page
Go ahead.
25. Okay. I'm trying to see where it starts.
Oh, I got it,
So
I got it.
Bjorn says, Bjorn alone seemed to agree. There's no sport in this contest. It is nothing more than this weasel-cocked fishmonger wanting bigger men to punish his wife for his own failings beneath the furs. Then he goes, "I plowed her nightly," Vigari shouted. "It's her fault." "Perhaps you plowed the wrong field," Bjorn laughed and jumped out of the way of my swing, knocking his axe against my shield, as though batting at a fly. And then she gets very angry, and then she's like, "Well, I'm gonna die anyway," so she pipes up and says, "Lemon juice made quick work of any seed his prick had to sow." And then Bjorn just starts losing his shit.
He's laughing.
Like, he's laughing his ass off, and Vigari is like pissed.
Staring daggers.
And then Bjorn goes, "Gods, Vigari," he laughed. "The world is truly better off without your progeny if you don't question why your woman tastes of lemons." And then she goes, "Taste?" I froze, staring at Bjorn, who gave me a slow smile. It seems he was most definitely doing it wrong.
Yeah,
Like,
clearly.
he calls him out immediately.
And then then Sonori goes, "Bjorn, shut the fuck up."
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my favorite part, is that his dad's just please. No.
But the fact that Bjorn was not afraid to fry Vigari at this point, I was like, snaps off to
they're
this
both,
guy.
they're both blessed by fairly
Yeah.
major gods, so they're pretty much on an equal playing field
Yeah.
here.
Mm-hmm.
They fight.
Bjorn starts kicking it up a notch because he got threatened, and he's like, "I'm so sorry, I'm going to have to kill you, too bad, so sad," kind of deal.
And she invokes the name of the goddess she is blessed with, which is Hyum, and essentially confirming that she is what's known as a shield maiden, and is the person who's going to play out this very specific destiny. And because of that, Jarl Snorri's like, "Yep, I'm taking you because you're going to be my destiny to be king."
So basically
And,
she figures out, she had a sense that there was something else going on here.
Yeah.
Further than just Vigari wanting a divorce. Vigari is basically, essentially selling her to Snorri. Yeah, basically Snorri is going to take her as his second wife.
We're a little polygamous here.
And he's basically going to be like, "Well, you're going to make me king now because that's what the prophecy says, so ha 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 ha."
They eventually make a deal, and then she's just like, "What the fuck? You sold me out, you motherfucker!" And her brother's thrashing, he's like, "No, run away! You can't do this. This is my sister." And Snorri's like, "Yeah, the fuck I can. What are you talking about?" And then the fact that her brother Gear didn't tell Snorri at all, he then is like, "You didn't prove your loyalty to me, and I'm gonna punish you for it because you didn't tell me your sister was the shield maiden." And so Snorri then swipes at him and breaks his leg. pretty badly.
And then basically is like, oh yeah, and by the way, that girl that you've been wanting to, I'm gonna go round her up to and marry her as well.
Yeah.
Well, no, that wasn't Snorri.
Oh no, he was gonna let Vagari.
Yeah, he was gonna go get Vagari do it with the coin he got from Snorri.
Yeah.
And that's when Freya's like, oh fuck you, and grabs Bjorn's axe, which she is not necessarily supposed to touch, as we find out later.
No one is really
supposed to touch it
because
except him.
He's the one that's been blessed by that.
Exactly.
And it's like smoldering, it's on fire.
Yeah, and she grabs it and throws it, and it lands right in the back of Rogi's head.
Yep.
So he's dead.
He's fucking dead. Which I thought was the most
sad.
badass thing. I was like,
and everyone's just like,
I was like, this is the best. I love this. Thank you.
But then, when I read that, I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Looky here.
Mm-hmm.
So then she kind of realizes, oh, I kind of screwed up here because her arm starts to hurt so bad. Everybody around her is freaking out now. They're like, what the heck? Why did you touch that? Why did you do that?
Her whole arm, pretty much half her arm's on fire.
Yeah, and she didn't realize it until the adrenaline wore off, and then she's like, oh yeah, I'm hurt very badly.
I am ouchie.
And even Bjorn like sees it because she goes down to look at her arm and he's like, do not look. I promise it's not going to be anything good that you want to see. And we find out later that like her entire flesh is like falling off.
Yeah,
and it's bad.
Yeah. Yep.
we get a little bit of like a cutesy moment where he's like, or not cute. I guess I shouldn't say cutesy because she's literally like dying, but like he's like carrying her to this healer's hut and like is like gripping her in his arms and whispering stuff in his ear or her ear and stuff.
That was one that got me kicking my feet a little bit, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
So she goes he goes to bring her to like a healer's hut, which is another woman who has been blessed with god magic. And they've been trying to like heal her, and they're like not sure because this is like a god injury.
And god injury.
And this is this is a lot. So this is, by the way, we're in chapter 4 now. Chapter 3 was basically them freaking out, and then her riding to Snorri's house and meeting his first wife, who's kind of a little bit mean to her, and she's like, bro, what the fuck? Well, that happens in chapter 4. Chapter 3 is basically them just traveling there and Bjorn trying to keep her alive. Yeah. She's like going in and out of consciousness and all of that stuff. But yeah, and then like again, kind of bantering back and forth. Like I think what like him joking. This is Bjorn. Her hand is falling off. They're riding towards the healer's hut. She's going in and out of consciousness. And he calls her the shield maiden, and she's like, don't call me that. And he says, you're right, he said. That's not original. I shall think of something better. Perhaps Freya One Hand, or Freya Axe Thief, or Freya Scorched Palm. Like,
I love, okay, when I hear banter, okay, yeah, don't get me wrong, the whole, like flirty and, like, borderline sexual and blatantly sexual banter is great. This is the kind of banter that I love. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Let me just make fun of you.
Freya the axe stealer. Like they're just picking at each other.
And then her response to that was just, I don't like you.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is very nice.
Simple, to the point, not poetic. Respect that.
So they get to Snorri's house with his first wife, and in that house is she her daughter or?
Huh? It just says Liv is just, I think, the healer.
The healer. She's the healer. Okay, I wasn't sure what the relation, because they were in the house together. Yeah.
But I don't think she's their daughter. I think she's just kind of like a healer that hangs out with the.
Yeah, so she's a healer that's been blessed by a god. I can't remember which god.
Aaron
or something like that.
Ain or
the god of healing.
Wait, wasn't it Aaron or something?
Yeah, I think so. Something like that.
But yeah, so then she like gives these really quick introductions, all of this stuff, and then she tries to heal the wound, and she ends up covering it in this like moss thing, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I thought that was cool.
Well, first to get to that point, she had to ask the god to bless.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
To bless Freya, not Farah.
Freya.
if she's worthy, and then Bjorn steps in on her behalf because nothing happens. And Bjorn's
right,
like,
so
this
the
isn't
god is
right.
like a little bit mad at Freya for some reason, and doesn't originally like the moss started as like a really small clump on the corner of her hand, and then Liv prays and basically like if you find favor, please heal her, and it doesn't happen. Then Bjorn's like, quit being petty and heal her.
Yeah,
like
this ain't her fault.
This
bitch.
ain't her fault. He deserved it, kind of thing. And so eventually the moss like all grows up her arm on its own and like heals all of the wounds, but she can't pull the moss off until it's like dead and decay. And Liv warns her, he's like, you are gonna get the healing that your god, the god thinks that you deserve. Like we could peel back and it could be like smooth as baby's bottom, or it could be a withered crone hand. Yeah, but you better be grateful for whatever you get.
And I feel like she is either way, because the next morning when she wakes up, the moss is dead, and she peels it away, and she has withered, scarred skin.
She is, the hand is still functional, if not like slightly stiff, but it doesn't, because cosmetically you can tell that there was an injury there.
Yeah.
It's like all black. And of course
scorned.
Snorri's like, man, that doesn't look nice, but yeah.
But I mean, they do reiterate, it's like, well, the prophecy never said that she had to be like completely intact and perfect, so this is what it is. And then we kind of get this interesting thing because Snorri is already married. This is his wife. They're in the house.
Ylva is his wife.
Ylva, and Ylva seems weirdly on board with this.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like
she's gonna backstab.
Well,
predictions.
Maybe she's just as power hungry as Snorri is.
Well,
that
here's
too.
the thing. She is, because I can't say why, because it's a spoiler, but she definitely is.
But, like, that's what I gather from it, because, like, I feel like no woman in her right mind would be like, come and marry my husband again.
Yeah.
Like,
No.
I will
I'm totally
share
fine with him sleeping with somebody else.
Especially someone who's so much younger.
Yeah.
Like, that's...
Because I think it was implied that Ylva's in, like, her late 30s, early 40s.
Something like that. I picture her and Snorri, like, older.
Yeah, they're definitely 40s, 50s.
Yeah, 40s or 50s-ish.
Because Freya said that Ylva's 20 years her elder.
So Freya's
at least that's a lot. Yeah.
Freya's 20, so that means she's 40 at the youngest.
Yeah. So, like, I feel
and they get a little too romantic with each other, Snorri and Ylva, when they're in the room together. I was like,
whoa.
Well,
they're straight up making out.
Well, okay, but here's what's very interesting to me is, like, we've talked about how, like, it seems like in this world that women are just mares, like horses, breeding horses at this point, and they're just they're not really like seen as special. But like we've seen Bragi's marriage to Freya, and it sucked. Yeah. But then Ylva and Snorri seem to have something very genuine and very like
they're in
very
love.
Like they're actually
not
only do they actually like each other, but they love each other.
Yeah, because they talk about. Oh, hang on, guys. Jeffrey's calling me. Give me a second.
Okay, back into it.
Sorry about that. We were talking about how Ylva and Snorri are in love, and
in love.
So Freya's like standing there. They're just talking about her like being a bride to him or whatever, and then Ylva's like, "Oh my word, I love you so much," and starts like making out with Snorri
freaking making out
in front of her, and like Freya to her credit is like, "This is awkward. I'm gonna leave."
She just drops the shield to make noise, and they just like look at her, and she's like, "Okay." Let's move on.
To be a part of this.
And I think it's at the
This is chapter 5, by the way. We're in chapter 5 and everything.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I want to go something back in chapter 4 real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
After they reveal her hand and everything like that, Freya's a little bit upset. Bjorn comes in and is talking to Liv, I think, while she's like, I'm trying to think if I think she's like half.
Yeah, it's right before she falls asleep.
Yeah, half passed out. They're talking about the war and the prophecy that the seer saw. Yeah. And Bjorn makes a comment here. Hilm is a goddess of war. He drew the furs up higher on my chest, cocooning me with warmth, but she also protects. Frustration wormed its way through the haze. What does that mean? And then Bjorn says, "You are unfated, Freya. Nothing the seer foretold is set in stone." Which I think is really important because everybody, especially Snorri, is saying that this seer is whatever the seer said is set in stone.
Well,
and he's not like realizing that it doesn't necessarily mean him. He just wants it to be him.
What sounds interesting though is like, you know, they go on and they've been going on and on about the prophecy, the Shield Maiden's prophecy, and Freya is, as we know, or so far is the Shield Maiden, but you know, at the same time she's unfated.
Yeah.
So on one hand, she's supposed to be fulfilling a prophecy, but at the same time, it doesn't seem like she's necessarily tied to it.
Yeah, she's definitely not.
I'm very interested to see how that plays out.
Snorri's definitely the only one who thinks it's tied to him, because it does say when Freya's like, okay, but why do you think that, Snorri? And Ylva interjects and says, oh, because the prophecy seers only told that to him. He was the only one allowed to know that, which I feel like he may have lied, and maybe it's somebody else that he wants it to be him.
I don't think that's necessarily...
But at the same time...
I think there's some foul play going on
Bjorn is the only one who is reiterated in these first 5 chapters at least 2 or 3 times, like, you are unfated. Because of your blood, you have the choice to control the fates. The gods cannot see what it is going to happen with you in your life. You have the ability to pull and push and pull.
All they know is that she is going to eventually end up uniting everybody.
Yeah.
And everybody assumes that means she's going to bring war, especially because she's a shield maiden. Like, she's
associated with a god of war. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, but then, But anyway, so after that weird conversation where they're making out and then then she starts getting prepared for the wedding, and then she kind of has this flashback of thinking about when she first discovered her powers, and that's when we get a little bit of details of like how God children are born.
I think it's funny.
Is still weird to me.
I think it's still funny how they mentioned that this game is played by they mentioned that this game is played by children.
Yeah.
And that they're not supposed to play it, but they do anyway. Yeah. So they just stand there, like, yelling out names of gods, like, seeing if any of them
but to be fair, wouldn't y'all do the exact same
thing? I totally would.
I would be listing every single god and goddess there was to see if I was blessed.
Yeah, definitely.
Like Thor and Tyr and Freya and Hilm, or however you say that name.
So then, I think her father has when she realizes that she's blessed by Hilm, her father realizes what she is, and then tells her not to tell anybody, and all of this stuff. But then,
just tells her, like, you never say her name ever again. You're not allowed to practice this magic. You're not allowed to use it. Whatever. Yeah. Like,
and her father,
people will come and get
her father. Also, it was mentioned earlier in chapter 1. Her father died on her wedding night.
Yes, her father died on her wedding night.
That was an omen if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, that she believed was the omen of her marriage to Vagari. Frogman.
Vagari, yeah.
So anyway.
Then she also is being like, well, her father told her never to use her power, but she felt like she was kind of slighting the goddess, so she used it in secret, and then she got caught, and now she's in this situation, and she's like, this is exactly what my father was trying to prevent. Like, and I did not listen because, like a child, I didn't listen, you know?
Yeah.
And now she's feeling like she's facing the consequences of her action. So then we're talking about the servants that are getting her ready, and they ask about her hand. She says it doesn't hurt. You know, all of this stuff.
And the wedding is happening, today.
Like, literally
the next
yesterday, she was being dragged away from her husband after she killed him to be married to somebody else, and now today she's being married to somebody else.
Yeah. Right.
With some hand moss healing in between there.
Yeah.
And then the maids comment about, like, how she touched, like, the weapon, and then they, again, make some sexual comments about Bjorn.
Yeah, because apparently Bjorn is a hoe.
Man. Bjorn is a hoe.
What do you expect with a guy with the name Bjorn?
That's true.
And then she's kind of mad.
She's like, if your name is Bjorn, I'm sure you're not a hoe.
She's like, I literally, like, almost burned my hand off, and you guys are saying you do the exact same thing, just to sit on his lap.
Yeah,
like,
just to sleep with him? Like, what the fuck? Like, and they're like, oh, we do that because he's good in bed.
Yeah,
how do you know?
So she slapped them with this. It's, if you are willing to do so much to rub your arse up against a man's cock, then you're desperate indeed. And then the woman's dark eyes only met mine with a smile, or he's just that good in bed.
Like what? Says who?
Like, how do you know? What happened to,
like, how...
What happened to, like, why not kissing and telling?
Yeah, like, why are we portraying, like, these servants as, like, desperate hoes?
I mean, maybe they are, like, in a harem or something? Like, maybe they're just a part of... Maybe they're just prostitutes? I don't know.
And then she goes back to thinking about him and how hot he is, and she's blushing again.
Which, I mean, fair enough. Yeah. He is very attractive.
But then Yulva comes back when she's carrying like a bridal crown and whatever. And again, I'm just so weirded out. Like, Yulva is his wife, and he's preparing for another wife, and like...
Yeah, she's just there, like,
she's
gladly
just weirdly
doing
okay
it.
with it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe she's just like, I'm gonna be wife number 1, which she probably would be, but still.
Yeah. I just... She's, like, realizing that she's going, like, numb, basically. Like, her hand is numb, and now because of the injury, but, like, she's also, like, emotionally becoming numb to this whole situation. She's kind of almost, like, feeling like a rag doll being passed around at this point. And feeling, again, the feelings of being trapped and stuff like that.
Yep.
And then it ends before she's set to walk down the aisle, which, may I make a prediction? This wedding is not happening. I guarantee you something will happen where the wedding does not happen. But you know what would be really interesting is if it did. Because that would add such a dynamic.
That would definitely add something that I think a lot of fantasy books lack, which is unpredictability. Because, like, yes, we could predict it could go either way, and a lot of people would probably lean towards, oh, this wedding isn't happening.
I know, it's chapter
this is a ploy.
6, there's no way. But I would love to see Danielle L. Jensen throw a wrench like that and being like, oh yeah, no, this
you
did
thought.
happen.
I feel like she's really good at doing that. I think that some
Very
of
much.
her books especially her Bridge Kingdom books that I've read lately, those books are very good at throwing you off the scent, like making you think one thing and something else is completely happening.
It's hard when it's this big of a thing, though, and it's this obvious. Like, it's very hard to just do a 180. That nobody really does it.
Yeah.
Like, it becomes predictable about the fact that it's not going to go as planned.
Yeah.
Like, how it's not going to go as planned, we don't know.
Right.
But I guarantee you it probably will not go as planned. But I would be very shocked and very excited if it did, because it's something different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So thoughts so far?
I just want to keep reading this book.
Yeah, I do too. I want to see if I'm right.
Here's the thing. I started this book a little bit before we decided to read it for book club, and I'm into it. It's a very interesting story. I like it.
How far did you get?
Just under page 200.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of why I'm not making comments about your guys' predictions. But anyway, so I'm very much enjoying it. I think the only problem is, like, I was reading it and I just wasn't in the mood for fantasy at the time. Like, I think because I had just finished Throne of Glass, which if you haven't read Throne of Glass,
you should.
You need to. It's amazing. It lives up to the hype.
If you love good, clean fantasy,
yes.
That's some of the best.
So I was like, I've been reading Throne of Glass since like October or November of last year.
You did get through it pretty quick.
Yeah, you did.
I really?
Like, you really chugged along.
It felt like I drug it. I felt like I drug
Well,
it.
it's a 7-book series. It's really a lot.
Yeah, did you read many books in between? A lot of people
Not many, no.
Yeah, a lot of people will read a book in between each one.
No,
I think
okay,
you
hold on.
pretty
I
much chugged through the majority
can
of it.
actually, this is so off topic, we can edit it out later. But if I'm pulling up my Goodreads, I've read, let's see. So I read Crown of Midnight in 2020. I read Crown of Midnight this year. That's the wrong year. I read The Assassin's Blade first. Then it was November, and you all know how I feel about November.
Yeah.
I read Throne of Glass. Then I read a couple other things too. Like, I read some manga to get my reading goal. And I read a Christmas book. And then right after that, I went straight into Crown of Midnight. I finished The Endless War. And then I went straight into Crown of Midnight, read a manga, then Heir of Fire, Queen of Shadows, manga and an audiobook I was listening to, then straight into Empire Storms, Tower of Dawn, and then right from Tower of Dawn to Kingdom of Ash.
Yeah, that's like, you chugged through that. Yeah.
I did.
A lot of people take some breaks in between, and I think
did
you
not.
powered through.
I wanted to know. It was killing me.
It was so good. But yeah, I think, predictions, I also really hope this wedding goes through. Like, I'm super excited to where this whole book goes.
Yeah.
I think the newness of it too, like, yes, it's based on Norse mythology, but I feel like I haven't read something this refreshing in a long time.
I haven't seen a book with this kind of concept before.
Yeah.
Which I'm very intrigued to see how it goes.
Yeah. I think Danielle L. Jensen really knows how to write a good fantasy. I mean, we've seen it in the Bridge Kingdom.
Yeah,
like,
she's a romantic.
She's adding, I think, some definitely new elements with a lot of the characters and the archetypes that we're seeing. but I'm just very intrigued by it.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see where this goes as well. I do. Writing style's great. Yeah. I like her. I do enjoy the writing. It's good at giving details that make sense, but not like info dumping, which I can really appreciate, because fantasy novels also really fall into the trap of info dumping, which is like,
well, you need to if you're going into a whole new world.
Which, again, but we had discussed that with The Cruel Prince, where it was like they gave you nothing, and you were like, this is just the way it is. All right.
And I think just them slowly building the world around the story, which is something that I enjoy a lot better.
It's well paced so far.
Yeah. It's definitely well paced.
Because, like I said in the
besides,
beginning,
her falling in love with somebody she didn't know
and
10 pages
banter could be a little, could have been drug out a little bit.
Yeah. I was going to comment on the fact that I do love Danielle L. Jensen's style. I do love her books. I love the Bridge Kingdom. I love the new stuff that she's been putting out in relation to the Bridge Kingdom. I do think that a lot of fantasy authors nowadays are trending towards filling their books with a lot more smut than they used to, and I feel like that's because a lot of book talk and now is just everybody wants smut,
which annoys
everybody
me.
wants smut no matter what. Like there are specific
books. Again,
there's specific genres for
I'm
that.
not saying that like smut isn't necessarily unwelcomed in a book, but it really bothers me when people are like, it didn't have smut in it, so 3 stars. I'm like,
that's a hot topic I've been seeing around book talk.
I've seen that a lot too, but it's just you don't need to, there does not need to be smut. And I'm not every single story. I'm not sometimes not relevant. I'm not either, but it's make it relevant. Mean something, make it relevant, it doesn't need to be there just to be there.
But for comparison, with the Bridge Kingdom, it did have some smut in it, but it was necessary to the plot. It was necessary to further along the characters just because of that insane situation that they found themselves in. And then you look at the next 2 in the series, which is Inadequate Heir and The Endless War, and there is a lot more, I feel like, unnecessary smut.
Even though,
it didn't further anything for the characters' thought.
They just kind of got their rocks off.
Yeah, the Inadequate Heir is definitely more, but in The Endless War, there's only 3. There's not a lot.
No. But what I'm saying is it's a lot more of an uptick recently. And I think, and it's not just Danielle L. Jensen, I think it's a lot of fantasy authors.
I think a lot of people
let's look at Sarah J. Maas for
oh my word, that is a case study in
if you look at Throne of Glass, which has, I think, very, very little minor mentions.
Minimal smut, and it's
maybe 3.
And that's good. All at the very end of the series, too.
Yeah, because you take that time to develop the characters and those relationships. Yeah. And guess what?
And then
the books
were
not marketed as a romantic book. It was marketed as a fantasy book. And that's the way it would, there was romance in it, sure, but, there wasn't these insanely detailed smut scenes either.
Yeah, right.
It was if they are having that moment, it was more about the connection between the 2 characters rather than the physical act. And then you look at ACOTAR, which there is a reason I do not like that series. I don't... I could go on a rant, but I'm not going to because it's going to take up time. I dislike ACOTAR so much, and it's because of that switch of less meaningful connection. To
I think
trashy
smut.
Not all smut is trashy. I'm just saying the way that I'm going to say that now because I can tell people are going to be like, what do you mean okay, if you like smut, you do you. I'm saying the way that Sarah J. Maas, I feel writes her smut is trashy.
I prefer it more tasteful.
Tasteful smut is appreciated.
Tasteful and plot relevant.
I think with her, with Sarah J. Maas, I was really more referring... I think ACOTAR is its own separate thing.
True.
But even from ACOTAR to Crescent City, it's even worse. You think ACOTAR is bad? I have read all 3 Crescent City books, and it is... makes me want to, just gag. Because I am a smut lover. I'm a smut reader. I read a lot of smut. I enjoy it, because I think it's funny. And I think it's fun. Okay, it is also kind of funny to read sometimes because I'm just what is
if you're
this?
in a different mindset, you're not paying attention. You're the magical spot.
Yeah,
what?
It's
but
just fun to even in Crescent City, there are so many unnecessary scenes in that book that I'm like, what the lightning on her? What are you doing?
Yeah,
it's just so radically crazy that I'm like, what is this? What are we doing?
And
Why are we here?
I'm so, like, as somebody who really doesn't enjoy smut, I don't like the fact that it's in every fantasy book nowadays. It's a struggle to find a fantasy book that does not have some sort of smut in it. And I'm like, okay, again, tasteful smut is fine, but I really don't care for it. I would rather further the plot. I would rather feel like character connections, like deep bantering back and forth between characters, those kinds of moments, that are woven into the plot, that really develop a romance on there. Like, okay, for example, I'm going to go back to my old classical favorite, Six of Crows. Kaz and Inej. They have sexual tension, but it is never smut. It has never gone to that. I have kicked and giggled my feet more at those two than I ever have any other character that has had sex in a book before.
Giggled your feet?
I've giggled and kicked my...
She's giggled her feet.
You're like, I've kicked and giggled my feet. I'm like, giggled your feet. I've giggled and kicked my feet a little bit at those scenes. Because they're tasteful, but the tension, that's what people, I think, are really wanting from that. Yeah. But, like, I know there's just been a wave of people that have just been obsessed with the, forgive me again, trashy smut trends.
Yeah, but I think that's meant for romance books rather more than fantasy.
Here's what it's invading fantasy. I want it out. Get away. It's like a big
I'm interested in, though. I wonder if she introduced the banter so early because the actual smut's gonna happen later. Like, I think it's gonna be happening a lot later than we anticipated because it's very clear, as of now, like, it's very clear that her and Bjorn are not supposed to be together.
Yeah, they're not.
So I don't think it's gonna be like normal smut books where it's like witty banter on page 1, witty banter on page 1.
Which I don't think Danielle L. Jensen would really fall for that too much because she really hasn't. But so I'm not really expecting that.
Because Aaron and Lara had banter in the beginning, but they didn't do it until.
What I really hope for this is, I had a hiccup.
I know, it's okay.
What I really hope for this is that that Danielle L. Jensen builds up that tension between Bjorn and Freya.
I think she's gonna do
and it's not just Freya thinking about his body all the time.
Yeah.
That's another key to it. If she's thinking about him, there needs to be more substance than just, oh wow, his rock hard abs, his luscious soft lips, his cock. Like, I don't want to know
where you were going with that.
Like,
well,
can I get some again, his wit, his
readiness for battle.
I think the starkness of what was supposed to be conveyed through those first couple chapters of her thinking like that was like, oh, she's really starved for attention. I think that's really what it is because she has a horrible husband who she's not attracted to, who's treating her like crap. Oh, this person, I met him for 5 seconds and he was nicer than my husband has ever been.
Yeah.
So, of course I'm going to fall immediately in love with him.
I think that her attentions are going to be very much, dove into the whole shield maiden and surviving. That she's not, I don't think she's going to fall victim to the, giving me attention as much. In later chapters would be.
But I think that's what the starkness of the first couple chapters are meant.
Well, but it's not even just her. It's just there's a lot of sexual references and sexual stuff that has happened in this, and I'm hoping that maybe decreases a little bit, and more focuses on her being the shield maiden and stuff like that. Yeah. But it feels like every character that we have met so far has made some sort of revenge, some sort of sexual, remark or
they're
something.
all men.
Not all of them. The women were too.
Yeah.
The women made comments too.
But the majority of them are the men. I think it's to set up what the world and the culture is like in order to get you to understand, oh, this is why she's being treated and thinks and feels this way about specific things. Because, oh, she's grown up like this. Put yourself in that way. The way that she's also treating their comments is like, okay, whatever, I don't care. Why are you bringing this up?
Yeah.
And then even during that fight, she was like, oh, well, the lemon juice thing, I'm just going to say it now because I have nothing left to lose.
Right.
Whatever.
But anyways, I'm very interested to see where this goes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
I am too. I'm like I said, I love Danielle L. Jensen's work. I read almost all of her books. I'm excited. I mean, I haven't read her Dark Shores series, but
I haven't either. I've heard good things.
But yeah, I've heard good things, so we'll see.
We'll see what happens next time.
Yes.
Thank you guys for listening, Anybody else have any final comments before we go?
I essentially have the outro. You can find us on any podcast app where podcasts are found, be it Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, you name it, we're probably on there. We're sorry for leaving again.
We'll see you guys, hopefully not in a year.
Yeah, I know. Hopefully not.